There is a moment most people never fully commit to, even when they believe they have. A decision is made, a path is chosen, a declaration is spoken. But somewhere in the background of the mind, something remains untouched. A quiet exit, a hidden alternative, a door left slightly open, just in case. And because of that one unseen escape, the decision never becomes real. The body moves forward, but the mind stays behind, waiting for permission to retreat. The ancient warriors of Japan understood something far more severe than modern thinking allows. Commitment is not proven at the moment of choice. It is proven in the removal of all alternatives. Miyamoto Musashi did not write about partial engagement. He wrote about entering the path so completely that no second path could exist in the mind. This was not recklessness, it was clarity. A man divided between options is not free. He is weakened by possibility. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Commitment. In the modern world lived a man named Haru. He believed himself to be disciplined. He made plans, set goals, and spoke with conviction about the direction of his life. From the outside, everything appeared aligned, but beneath that structure was something subtle and persistent. He always kept a way out. Whenever he began something difficult, another option remained alive in his mind. If this path failed, he could switch. If this became uncomfortable, he could adjust. If doubt appeared, he could reconsider. This gave him a sense of security. It felt intelligent, even responsible. But over time, this hidden flexibility began to weaken him. Haru noticed that his effort never reached its full depth. His focus fractured easily. His commitment felt conditional, dependent on how he felt in the moment. When resistance appeared, his mind did not anchor, it drifted. Not because he lacked discipline, but because he had never truly removed the possibility of escape. He believed he had chosen a path. In reality, he had chosen multiple paths and committed to none of them completely. Chapter 2. The Samurai's Principle. The samurai did not move this way. In Bushido, the way of the warrior, commitment was not a flexible concept. Once a path was taken, it was carried without internal retreat. This did not mean the path was always correct. It meant the mind was no longer divided by alternatives. The principle was simple but severe. When you choose, you eliminate. Not physically, but mentally. You remove the existence of other options from your internal world. This is what gave the samurai their clarity. They were not constantly evaluating, they were executing. Musashi wrote that one must not cling to preferences, but also not scatter across possibilities. There is a state where the mind rests fully inside the present direction. No comparison, no hesitation, no internal argument. This is what allowed clean action. Not speed, not aggression, but unity. To the samurai, leaving a mental escape was more dangerous than facing external difficulty, because the enemy within does not confront you directly. It waits, it suggests, it invites retreat at the exact moment resistance appears. Chapter 3. The Hidden Door. Haru began to see this pattern in himself. Every time he committed to something, a second voice remained active. It did not shout, it whispered. It suggested alternatives, questioned decisions, and reminded him of easier paths. At first, he believed this voice was intelligence. It allowed him to stay flexible, to adapt, to avoid unnecessary suffering. But slowly, he began to notice its cost. Each time he listened to it, his action weakened, his focus split, his effort lost weight. He was not failing because his decisions were wrong. He was failing because his decisions were never final. This is the hidden door most people carry. It is not visible in behavior, but it exists in thought. It is the quiet belief that you can always step back, change direction, or abandon the moment. And because that door exists, you never fully step forward. Chapter 4. Burning the boats mentally. There is an old idea often misunderstood. To burn the boats is to remove the possibility of retreat. But the samurai did not need physical fire to achieve this. They understood something more precise. The real escape is not in the world, it is in the mind. Burning the boats mentally means removing the internal option to leave. It means that once a decision is made, the mind no longer revisits it as a question. It becomes a fact. Haru struggled with this. The idea felt extreme. What if the decision was wrong? What if something better existed? What if he needed to adjust? These questions felt reasonable, but he began to see that they were not leading to clarity. They were leading to hesitation. The constant evaluation of alternatives was not improving his decisions. It was weakening his ability to act on them. So he began a different approach. After choosing, he would not reconsider. Not emotionally, not mentally. The decision would stand, regardless of how he felt afterward. At first, this created discomfort. His mind resisted strongly. It searched for ways to reopen the door. But he did not engage. He did not argue. He simply continued forward. Chapter 5. The Weight of No Return. Something began to change in Haru's experience. His actions became heavier. Not slower, but more grounded. There was no longer a sense of lightness that came from knowing he could always turn back. There was only the path itself. This weight brought clarity. Without alternatives, his attention had nowhere to go but into the present action. His focus deepened. His effort became more consistent. He was no longer negotiating with himself at every step. This is what the samurai cultivated. A state where action is not diluted by possibility, where each movement carries the full presence of the mind. Musashi described a mind that does not cling and does not divide. It does not hold on to outcomes, but it also does not scatter across options. It moves forward completely, without internal fragmentation. This is the result of burning the boats mentally. Not intensity, but stability. Not force, but completeness. Chapter 6. The End of Internal Negotiation. Before this shift, Haru's mind was constantly negotiating. Every task became a discussion. Should he continue? Should he stop? Should he change direction? This internal dialogue consumed energy. It created friction in moments that required clarity. It slowed him down, not physically, but mentally. As he removed the option to retreat, this negotiation began to fade. There was nothing left to debate. The decision had already been made. Action became simpler, not easier, but cleaner. He did not need to convince himself. He did not need to justify his effort. He simply followed through. The samurai understood that hesitation is not always loud. Sometimes it appears as thought, as consideration, as careful evaluation. But in moments of action, this becomes a form of weakness. A warrior does not debate during movement. He completes the movement. Chapter 7. Identity without exit. Over time, Haru began to notice something deeper than improved focus. His sense of identity began to shift. He no longer saw himself as someone who tries and adjusts. He began to see himself as someone who remains. This was not based on emotion. It was based on repeated action. Each time he refused to reopen the door, he reinforced this identity. The samurai did not rely on motivation. They relied on who they believed themselves to be. A warrior does not ask whether he feels like continuing. He continues because that is what he is. Haru adopted this principle. He made a simple decision about himself. He would not leave the path once he had stepped onto it. Not because it was easy, but because it defined him. This removed the final layer of hesitation. There was no longer a question of what he should do. The answer was already determined by who he had chosen to become. Chapter 8. Strength without alternatives. The strength that began to form was not dramatic. It did not appear as bursts of energy or moments of intensity. It was quieter, more stable, less dependent on conditions. Haru noticed that even when situations became difficult, his mind did not scatter as before. It did not search for exits. It remained where it was. This is the strength that emerges when alternatives are removed. Not the illusion of control that comes from having many options, but the reality of presence that comes from having one. The samurai limited themselves not because they lacked opportunity, but because they understood the cost of division. Every open path is a piece of attention lost. Every alternative is a fracture in focus. By narrowing the mind, they strengthened it. Conclusion: the fire that leaves no return. Burning the boats mentally is not about forcing yourself into a situation without thought. It is about removing the illusion that you can remain divided and still be strong. It is about understanding that true commitment begins where options end. Most people live with one foot in and one foot out. They move forward, but they are always prepared to step back. This creates a life of partial effort and incomplete presence. The samurai chose differently. They stepped forward fully, and in doing so, they removed the possibility of retreat from their minds. This gave them clarity, it gave them stability, it gave them strength. When you burn the boats mentally, something quiet but irreversible happens. The mind stops searching for exits. The path becomes singular, and in that singular path, your attention gathers completely. There is no longer a question of whether you will continue. There is only the act of continuing. And in that act, something remains that cannot be easily broken.